what I'm wondering about is there's this long gap from when you had that incident with Strauss. Like when this resurfaced, how did that land on you emotionally?
Oh, there's no way to articulate it in words because you just, I didn't have any motivation back then. My motivation was to make sure it never happened to anybody else. And I made them promise me 3 things from the 90s. I basically said, I want you to promise me that this has never happened before. I want you to promise me if it ever happens again, that you're going to call me, contact me, because I'll make sure it never happens again. And I want you to make sure it's documented in this file. And as a kid, but I was out of the military, so I was a little bit more mature than other people. I made them promise those 3 things to me. And I've got that on their letterhead from the 90s. So now when society and public was questioning all these survivors that were coming forward, Mike DeSabato and Brian Garrett, and all these other kids that were coming forward, and they were just tearing that Mike DeSabato apart, talking about his credit and his motivations, and he's got a bone to pick with the university. And I felt bad for the guy. I didn't know him, but when they're really kind of discrediting these survivors for coming forward, I have this proof that says, hey guys, everything that they're telling you is a lie. They promised me that they would contact me. They never did. They promised me that this had never happened before. They never did. I'm like the worst nightmare for them in all this, because I basically validated all those 300 people that have come forward that just like me suspected something was going on. But just because I had the wherewithal to ask for those things back in the 90s, I can't tell you how important that is today, because I don't think we would be here today. I honestly don't. And again, I'll disclaim this is my speculation, but I think that if I didn't have proof on letterhead that said that they lied to me, that they basically covered it up back then, I don't know how this investigation would have actually turned out. Whether it would have come out to be, we're just getting a lot of people's words against other people's words. And I honestly think, when I first came forward, I talked to the Perkins Coie people and I said, my name's Steve. It was Steve Hill back then. I think that this guy might have been somebody. And she wrote me right back and said, Steve, we're so glad you came forward. We were hoping you would. Yes, and in short, we've got some of your paperwork from back then. So immediately I said, well, I want it. I want my paperwork. And she said, no, we can't give that to you. And so then I did a public information request to OSU and got it. And so it just felt really, really shady from the beginning. Then I started asking questions of the media. I said, why aren't they reaching out to people? If this investigative team had what I have in my hand, in their hand, there should be no reason, if they were really, truly, transparently trying to find out what happened, that they would not have contacted me. Because if they lied to me 3 times in this. And in the Perkins report, the only person that they quoted that they know that OSU lied to was student B, which is me. So I'm the only person that was documented that OSU lied to them, that had documentation that lied. I think that if that documentation wouldn't have surfaced, everything would be different. And I can't help but think that just when you're talking about institutions and the legal processes, that somebody had to be like, Jesus Christ, he came forward, and that was a bad day for them, which I don't care. All I wanted to do back then was to stop it. I didn't try to legally challenge them back then. I didn't even know that was an option. I didn't know that calling police was an option. I was a kid. I relied on those doctors to tell me what my options were, and they didn't give me any. And so now I am their worst nightmare. And now I will stop at nothing until it comes out. And I just talked to an author that's doing a book called Institutional Indifference. I don't know if that's the title of it. But basically, it's this book that talks about what you're talking about. We all work for places that all do damage control. Totally understand that. I can't fault OSU for trying to do damage control. They've got a reputation to protect. I 100% understand that. But withholding information for 5 months and doing things that they did, that crosses a level for me that I think is just unethical. And I think that it's really dirty. And I think they need to be exposed for that. But I can tell you, if Drake would have come on TV early on in this as the president of the university and said, okay, so my job as your president of your university is to protect our university, is to protect our reputation, to protect our sports team, to protect our employees, and just to make sure that our financial assets are protected. That's my job. Somebody just come forward that told me our university did something horrible to them at a time that I wasn't even here. So now I have to somehow reconcile these 2 things that have come into my lap of my responsibility to protect us and my responsibility to face what we did as a university. And if he had done that in that human moment and just came out and said that, he would have just shut me off. I would have just shut down and thought that's completely fair. And that's a completely human thing to do. Instead, what they did was they dug in and started saying the university of 20, 30, 40 years ago and things like that just would piss me off over and over. Because I'm like, you're discounting us. Stop saying what may have happened and who may have known, because on your letterhead, you and I both know what happened and who knew. So I know the institutional indifference. I know what you're trying to do, but it's insulting. And at this point, you just need to stop it. And so, I mean, I totally get it. I get the damage control, but they've just bumbled this and they've screwed it up. And now that they absolutely are going to regret it.
A lot of people in your position just want things to end. They want to go away. And I saw some of the immaculate notes and the way you organize a lot of the documents that, yeah, that doesn't work to their favor, but good for you for doing that. Well, another interesting point through all this is at some point in the past, I think, is it Congressman Jim Jordan at Ohio State University? He was an assistant wrestling coach.
Yeah.
Now, is it true that he denies having any knowledge of all that stuff going on with Dr. Strauss?
Well, probably expound on that. He doesn't just deny it. He almost crassly denies it. He just discounts it. He's like, it's the way that he does that is probably my biggest issue, because here's the thing is that if anybody thinks that there's going to be some epiphany that Jim Jordan's going to have and going to say, yes, I knew, you're crazy. He's never going to do that. That would never be smart of him to do. He's never going to admit that he knew or that he didn't know. He's not going to ever do that. But the thing is that a decent human being, if asked, did you know about this, knowing what we know now, with 3,000 people, or 1,500 people, that 1,500 times that guy molested somebody, 300 people at least that have come forward, and how many people haven't come forward? If you knew that as a human being and you knew that you were directly responsible for these kids who were being molested, then you need to take some ownership and say, Jesus Christ, I'm so sorry if I didn't do something, or I feel partly responsible that I didn't do something. For somebody to just be that close to all those wrestlers and then just to say, no, didn't know anything, and here's the thing is that, again, I'm not going to challenge his morality or his answer. I'm just going to say that Tim Nagy, which was Strauss's attorney from back then in the 90s, wrote a letter to Helen Ninos, which was OSU's attorneys back in the 90s, and said, the rumors and the innuendo are rampant across the entire Ohio State community, including other universities, and talking about how it was destroying Strauss's reputation about the rumors and innuendo of his sexual assault. So his lawyer wrote OSU's lawyer back then saying everybody knew. So I would just ask Mr. Jordan, can you answer what his lawyer asked back in the 90s? Can you answer how you, the person that was directly responsible for these kids who spent every day with them in practice in the locker room and all this stuff, how you didn't know? Like that's all I would ask him, is that I think that the burden of proof would be, how didn't you know? And again, I'm not political. I'm not here to smear him. I just think that he probably set himself up for failure by trying to be so crass and just say, nah, didn't know. Now you're going to make us all question you more, because now we think that your answer probably deserves a little bit more looking into, because how didn't you know? And don't you have any regret for not knowing, since you directly supervise these kids?
It's a surprising statement, and it's not surprising. It's not surprising to hear or to see that position from a politician. What is surprising is for anybody who's been on a college campus, for anybody who's been in a sports locker room, how rumors spread and how quickly they spread and the depth at which they sort of travel in terms of people understanding, especially something of the magnitude with a big sexual scandal. So it's surprising, but not surprising for him to take that position if that's what he said. How is this investigation still ongoing?
So the investigation is over. They released a report in May. Then here's some fun stuff. Like I'm not making any of this up. I only quantify this because in some John Grisham novel, you might suspect that, wow, that was a plot twist. But OSU in 2018, when all these survivors were coming forward, released Strauss's personnel file as an attempt to be transparent. Right away, released it, put it out there. You can download it, 228 pages that said that he was a shining, perfect employee. Not one reprimand, not one mention of my complaint or anybody else's complaint, not one mention of sexual assault, nothing. 228 pages that they cherry picked and released to the public to call us all liars at a time when we needed the public to believe us. Then Drake just released, after Perkins, a official, letter to everybody and said, "Oh, we just found a box of stuff in a move to Means Hall or whatever, and just discovered another box that has some more documents in it. And here are the documents, you can download them." And we turned them right over to Perkins, and we found a box.
Wait, so, who's Drake again? Is that the president?
Yeah, we found this box. I'm like, what? You paid $6 million for a law firm that handles like legal stuff for Amazon to go through and find every single thing, and you just found a box after it's all released? And so I started going through all this stuff in this box, and one of the things, it had a lot of his personnel files in it. So somehow some of the personnel files got separated from what OSU transparently released and got shoved into another box. And one of those papers said that his appointment was terminated. So then I'm just like, okay, again, like Jim Jordan, now the burden of proof on you, OSU, to say, had you found this box and released everything in his personnel file, I think the media immediately would have probably said, oh, wait a minute, it says something about a terminated appointment. What does that mean? And started questioning and started to believe the survivors and put a lot more pressure on OSU. But instead, some things got, just mysteriously put into one box. And they said they went through 350 boxes or 3,500, 35,000. I don't even know how many pages of stuff. Never found anything. And this one box turns up after the report, and then he releases it. So again, the difference that I have with anybody doing institutional protection, meeting with the lawyers, there's a level of shade when stuff like that starts happening that I start saying, time to go, Drake. Time to go, head of the board. Gasser left. I mean, Drake's announced his retirement. Gasser left. The head of their legal just announced he's taking another job. Do I think it has something to do with all this? Absolutely, I do. That's speculation. They're saying that it's not something to do with this. But that kind of stuff is just super shady. And again, the thing that I go back to, the only thing I want in the 90s, the only thing I want today is to make sure that kids that they're in charge of today have protection and that it doesn't happen again. They're not assuring me that at all when they're playing these games, when they're not releasing stuff for 5 months because they're controlling narratives, when they're finding a box miscellaneously out of the blue. Then the only thing that's missing is another Strauss.
I've never been an investigator, nor do I want to be one. But my understanding is that when you have a body of evidence, that evidence is cataloged and it's organized and it's accessible to the people who have it. And for this box to magically just pop up at a certain time is just quite comical.
It's almost a joke to me now. And it's sad because these are people's lives. These are 300 people who have lived with this, and their lives have been, destroyed. Some of them lost jobs and lost marriages. And I just can't, these people sit in these leather chairs and make these decisions. And they make these decisions like it's not my family member. And then I think that's the travesty in all this. I keep posting the board of trustees pictures on my Facebook and saying, these are the people. I want you to see their faces, because I really do. I want people to see that these are the people that completely treat us like crap. Like if we were their kid, everything would be different. And I want them to be called out. I want their faces to be called out, and I want them to be shown to the public, and then they can live with that.
I don't feel like they've received the appropriate amount of judgment.
No, because if they had received the appropriate amount of judgment, they would be doing the right thing. They wouldn't be discounting people. At the same time, here's an irony, is that the OSU Leonard in the newspaper, the they released an article, and it quoted Michael Carpenter, which is OSU's lead attorney that's fighting all the survivors. And the quote was that he said, "We are not being dismissive of the survivors." And then the headline of the article was, "Ohio State moves to dismiss the lawsuit." I just took a screenshot of it. I'm like, here you go, guys. I just want you to see this, because it actually, that institutional indifference, these people that sit in the chairs and make these decisions, it's like, I just want to be in there and have common sense. Then the other thing is, on a Friday night, OSU releases to the media and says, "We are going to be the leader of the sexual assault task force."
Do you believe that?
Oh, well, here's the thing, is that they release that on a Friday night when the media really can't respond, because they know that that's, the time to release stuff when nobody can do anything over the weekend. And so all the news stories that came out, I made clips of all these. I took all of our local channels and clipped where they were talking about this story. And they said they haven't provided any details of the sexual assault task force or what it's going to do or who's going to be on it. And I just clipped all those together and just released that video. And I was like, this is hilarious, because the media are onto OSU. Because what they do is they release something on a Friday. Sounds really good. They sit in there, the board of trustees sits in there with their leather chairs, and they said, "Oh, it's sexual. Yeah, go with that. Go with that. Sounds good. Release it." And then somebody questions and says, "What does that mean? What do you mean by that? Or was that just a stunt? Are you just waiting for the next football game to come along for everybody to just forget about it because Ohio State beat Michigan? Is that what you're really doing?" And that's completely clear that that's what they do. Because it took another 5 months before they ever gave any details on what the sexual assault task force was going to be. And then they never once asked any of the people that were actually survivors of Strauss to be on this, to be able to tell them, "Hey, guys, here's what happened. Here's how I felt about the way you guys handled this." They never once asked any of us to be on it. And to my knowledge, I don't even know any sexual assault survivors that are on it. It's the lead of it right now is the head of their dean of law school. So what's his sexual assault, experience? Is he a survivor? Does he have somebody in his family that knew about sexual assault? Is he somehow an expert in sexual assault? Or is he the head of their legal? And if he's the head of their legal, then it's a person in an executive chair making a decision that sounds good on paper, but then they have Steve Snyder-Hill out here that's calling them out on the BS. It doesn't make any sense. What meaningful thing are you going to do with this task force? Why are you having anybody be on the task force that's a Strauss survivor? And then they came out after I started asking that. They came out and said, "We can't do anybody that's currently litigating against us. And, we would love to do that. Maybe after the litigation, we'll be able to have people on this." But then my question to them then was that, okay, so 1,500 people have been abused, or 1,500 instances of abuse, 300 people have come forward. If that's the case, why aren't you asking if anybody wants to come forward that's not part of a litigation to help us sort through this that was affected by Strauss? We would love to have you on our task force. So they can't make up this stuff, because I'll call BS on them. I'll say, okay, then ask people to come forward that aren't suing you. And I'm sure that there are people out there. Well, I know that there are, because they reached out to me and said they haven't sued or they don't want to come forward or whatever. So why not ask them if they want to give input? I honestly would love to be on that task force, because I would let them understand. Let's say that every one of their intents has not been scandalous or anything that I think that it's been. I can tell them my perception of their intents, and I can say, well, here's how it appears to a human being that's been affected by it. So maybe you shouldn't ignore somebody for 5 months when they're asking for paperwork. Maybe you should respond to them and say, "I can't give you this because." Maybe you should not use the words "what may have happened" or "who may have known" when you know what happened and who knew. There are a lot of things that I think that constructively I could probably help them be a better university. But right now they view me as a liability. They view me as an enemy, when I'm just a human being that was affected by their misjudgment. And I would love to keep this from happening to other people. I think that that's one thing that's been demonstrated more than anything, is that I could have done something back in the 90s to them and tried to sue them and get money or whatever. I didn't. All I wanted to do was to keep it from happening. And I think the reason I'm so pissed off now is not only did I find out that I failed in doing that, but I find out that I failed in a huge way. Brian Garrett is a kid that happened after me. He would have never happened had they stopped and listened to me. And it's like that kind of stuff just infuriates you. And then now you're like, I'm not going to give you an inch. So they probably think I'm unreasonable and an awful person for how I won't give them an inch.
The frustrating thing is when you have scandals like this is, there's a lot of orchestration on the part of the corporation or the institution. And then there's a pageantry of the press conference, and we'll make things right. And we'll make sure this never happens again. And then when it's all said and done, it happens again. And they really didn't do anything of substance to prevent it.